Long ball number 3. It is the postseason for the Elite Amateur leagues, USL 2, NPSL, and otherwise. One of the teams in USL 2 making huge waves this year with their attendance and action on the field, Annapolis Blues, facing lots of questions about going pro after getting 5-digit attendances regularly. And there's an article that came out in the last few days. USL League Two club Annapolis Blues have their sights set on going pro after breaking attendance records in 2 different soccer leagues. So amazing stuff there.
This is over at the Baltimore Business Journal. If you're wondering where this is, Garrett Dvorkin writing about a week ago, and this escaped our attention. And this is obviously pertinent to our interest because we talked about Annapolis Blues and their record-setting attendance. We talked about the idea of them going pro. We pondered that idea. Then we talked to Michael Hitchcock, who's one of the people behind the Annapolis Blues. Now, he's got a group that is invested in a number of these clubs, and we talked about a lot of them with Hitch. And we talked about Lubbock, and we talked about there's a new team in Virginia it's escaping me what town that's in. No, not the Dream. Down in the corner of Virginia. I can't remember the name of the city right now, but it'll come to me. And look, again, Hitch isn't the on the ground guy in Annapolis, right? He's the bigger picture guy. So when we talked to him about going pro, there wasn't I don't remember him saying, "Yeah, we want to take this team pro." I think the idea was
shot us down when we.
I think he kind of did. I think he kind of did. So this is why this is interesting to me. And I'm not saying that he was lying. I'm saying that things change. And obviously there are different people involved in doing something like running the Annapolis Blues. So this is Fred Mathis, the Blues general manager, who is quoted in this story. Initially, we wanted to create a local amateur team and would have been happy to draw a crowd of 3,000 to 4,000 people. But we blew that out of the water. And every time we draw more than 10,000 fans, the question is about going pro and charting a path for us to do that. Now, to be fair to Mathis, it's not like he's saying we drew 10,000, we drew 12,000, we're going pro. He's saying we have to consider, like, how could you not consider the possibility with those numbers, Rob? Like it'd be ridiculous to go look at all this excitement for soccer in Annapolis. You know what we're going to do? We're just going to stay where we're at. I mean, just which again, maybe there is a need for a little bit of that in American soccer. Like maybe
just pumping the brakes and sometimes.
Yeah, just being thoughtful about these processes and not necessarily diving headfirst in because you saw a little burst of excitement, right? Like you need to do analysis. You need to make sure that this is sustainable. You got to know, hey, if we go pro, and this is what we said with Hitch, right? And this is what we talked about on our first video about whether Annapolis should go pro. The different costs that come with being a professional soccer team as opposed to a short season, high amateur team, right? What are their expenses outside of renting their stadium? Almost nothing.
Taking care of their team, whatever operational costs, league fees, but I mean, it's certainly not full-time staff, full-time playing staff, full-time training staff,
right?
Facilities year-round, practice facilities. There's
all that stuff.
Huge
travel across the country or travel, 2 time zones away rather than right in your backyard or a regional approach that USL 2 has, right? These things. And so again, it's not like Fred Mathis is saying it's happening tomorrow. In fact, he says this isn't going to happen tomorrow, but down the road, if the opportunities present themselves and we have the right finances in place, absolutely, it would be a step we would take. This story says they had $1 million in revenue this season, which for a USL League Two team, pretty incredible.
I think the usual budget is like 8 to 15,000.
Well, okay, this is revenue. I don't know what their spend was, right? So I don't know what, like, if there's a profit here, what is that doing? Where are they putting it? Those kind of things. I mean, those are interesting questions. The biggest issue facing a team like Annapolis, and it will be a topic of discussion on this show later on, I think, is stadium. Right? Right now they play in Navy's Memorial Stadium. That is a big college football venue, right? That is not a permanent home. They would need training facilities. They don't have training facilities. They have a bunch of college kids come in, right? They're probably training on auxiliary fields that Navy allows them to use or that they rent from Navy. They don't have their own training facility. They would probably have to approach that, right? They'd have to deal with that. Again, Mathis mentions that as part of the season, part of the story. So
Yeah, it's not an original part of their original plan. We would probably need a new stadium, new year-round training facility, need access to more players and a higher level of talent, and require way more investing in recruiting. So I mean, they're scratching the surface. They know that there's a market there, but they have to basically build and everything to get there.
My guess here is that the reporter reached out to the club, got Fred Mathis, said, "Hey, are you going pro, or are you thinking about going pro?" And Fred Mathis said, "Well, it would be insane not to at least consider the possibility. And there's a path there. Obviously, if there's this much excitement in Annapolis for our team, there's a path there to go pro. But yeah, we've got to do this and we've got to do that." And again, this comes back to something that we talked about with Detroit City FC, Rob. The idea of going from NPSL to pro, from NISA to USL Championship, meant bringing in people who are not part of the original crew, whose motivations may be different than yours.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as we know at the moment, with Detroit City getting ready to build their own stadium, everything has gone well for them. They found somebody who's willing to invest but not get involved in terms of
which is a unicorn, really. I mean,
unicorn. That's the dream. That just doesn't really happen. So if Annapolis is like, well, in order to become a pro team, we've got to find a place to build a stadium, which means dealing with localities and tax laws and infrastructure and everything else. We got to finance that. We got to have a facility to train in. We got to finance that. We all these things. Now we got to go find money. And what do people who put money into things usually want, Rob? They want to say.
They want power, control.
Yeah. That is the interesting thing here. And I'm not going to tell Fred Mathis or anybody involved with Annapolis, don't go pro. Don't do it. You'll ruin a good thing. I don't want to say that. But I think if you've been around American soccer long enough, it's pretty easy to be worried about stuff like that. But I guess the point is, if we want to dot the map with clubs that can really contribute to American soccer's grand future, then probably a place that can draw 12,000 in the summer needs to be the home of some sort of professional enterprise, right?
Something that lasts longer than 3 months.
Something that goes longer than 3 months, something that encourages more people to play and be involved, something that gives kids who live near Annapolis, and Annapolis is relatively close to DC, it's relatively close to Baltimore, and yet you would still rather a kid who grows up in Annapolis or right around there or the Eastern Shore or whatever have a chance to go play in an academy for Annapolis than have to drive an hour or two or whatever to go play somewhere else in an academy that's connected to a professional team.
Yeah, I wonder how much off-season connection to the community Annapolis does. Like, does the Annapolis Blues brand live year-round? Are they constantly have programs and meetups and sort of community interactions to keep that going? Because I know with my experience with Oakland County FC, we've had some great years of attendance, but a lot of the time, by the time 9 months of a couple activities here and there, by the time the season comes around again, you have to remind everyone to come back on out again. And I know a lot of teams suffer with that, with it being the amateur nature when the club's not in session. If it's not a club that's already connected to something larger than just the first team, you struggle to prioritize it as the very first thing in someone's world. So if the people that are running it aren't able to put their primary energy, resources, and time into that, then, I mean, that makes it very difficult for that to live and then keep that energy and excitement and those 12,000 people that were at that game engaged until next year.
Right. Yeah. That again, it's sort of easy to fill the gap between what they are now and being a professional team with an imaginary things that aren't there yet, that you have to. And again, sometimes you'll miss that stuff. And this is why smart people who know how to build soccer teams are incredibly important in this country. And figuring out who those people are is sometimes difficult, right? The idea that, that guy knows how to build a soccer team because he had one success or two successes. And then what is it that he did or she did that is different than what somebody else did somewhere where it didn't work? And again, when you look at the markets where it didn't work, you go, well, is it on the people who built the team or is it on some other factor that came into play that we didn't expect to be an issue for them? Whether it's a stadium lease that runs out. And again, I don't want to be a scold and say, don't start a soccer team because you don't know if it's going to last. I don't like dead soccer teams though. I don't like soccer teams dying. I don't want that to continue to be the story of American soccer. So where is the line between taking the risk because it's worth taking the risk and, being assured on some level that you're not going to fold in 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, we're not ruining a good thing just for the sake of advancement, just because there was outside pressures.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
well, because Flint is facing that same thing from Annapolis here soon. They don't get 12,000, but they get 5,000, and they have continued success on the field. But what's the motivations for them? They are a big fish in a small pond. They have people working year round. They're one of those half dozen to a dozen clubs at that USL 2 level that are always at the very least reaching the national semifinal level. There always a threat to make a deep run, and they get thousands of people there, and they're like, well, when are you going pro? But what does that mean if they have to pay their players, and they're going to get enough people in Flint, Michigan to pay a whole salary for a
question is
club?
Why are you going pro? I mean, I think that's at the heart of this. Like, when you think about it, why are you going pro because people expect you to, because you got 12,000 out and now you feel like you have to meet that expectation?
Getting 12,000 people for 9 months is a lot harder than 3 months too.
Exactly. So I don't think that alone can be the reason to go pro. Like, we had a bunch of people show up for a couple of games. That's not a reason to go pro. The reason to go pro is because you think that's going to improve the soccer situation in your given market. Now, obviously, like, again, some of this is business motivations. If we're a USL 2 team, do we make less money than if we're a pro team? So let's go pro to make more money. Right. But again, because of the nature of professional soccer in America and how fraught it is, particularly the lower levels, that's probably not always true. So then who needs to be the person, or what kind of sense do you need to get from your community to decide you're better serving them by going pro rather than stay where you are? And John Hunt is saying it. Not every USL 2 team needs to go pro. And when we did our USL League One expansion update last week, there might be 7 new teams in USL League One. How many of those are coming up from USL League Two, Rob? How many are making that lump? 5 of them, something like that?
Yeah, it wasn't just a poof out of nowhere, here's a pro team, but yeah, people making that transition. And I can't wait till we have our Fort Wayne guest come on, because seeing that transition, I mean, I was on hand for their first ever game in 2021, and that was always kind of the story that was told, that, we have eyes for pro, and, they definitely haven't rushed into it. And seemingly with a stadium coming along, making the jump to pro, that slow, methodical way is a good way to go, it would seem at this point. But very exciting times there for that team.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, again, I'm not going to hate on somebody's ambition if they have it and if they have a plan. And I don't know, it feels defeatist on some level to say, well, we can't let all these teams go pro because some of them are going to die, and that would be bad. And like, just think about that negative as the reason not to do something and let it scare you, Rob. Right?
Yeah, again, it's like, well, if nobody took a risk, most of the coolest things in the world wouldn't exist, right?
I mean, that's true. That's true, right? You don't know unless you try. But if we have a country where people have tried hundreds of times only to fail, and then we think of that collective psychic damage done by club after club after club after club folding, and it's psychic damage. I don't even know it's fundamentally bad for a soccer market. I used to talk about Austin a lot before Austin FC arrived, before Anthony Precourt executed his grand scam on MLS and got his team in Austin. They had multiple teams leave, collapse, right? The Austin Aztecs, you know that Orlando City started in Austin, right? Phil Rollins launched a team in Austin. Now, his play was always to go pro. His play was always to find a way to MLS. But he found out that Austin wasn't the right place for it at the time, and he picked up and he left and he went to Orlando, and he pulled it off in Orlando. Got that team into Major League Soccer after they were in the USL for a couple of seasons and won some trophies.
Right? Yeah. So what are the current MLS teams that did that USL to MLS changeover? It was Minnesota, Orlando, and who else did that transition?
Well, man, Minnesota's history is a whole other thing too, right? I was writing about the MLS archive, the kits that just dropped last week. I was writing about that on my my newsletter and sort of recognized they went with like this Minnesota Kicks font on their front when it says Loons, right? That was their throwback to an NASL version of soccer in Minnesota. But, you know, there were multiple teams that played in Blaine that predate Minnesota United in Major League Soccer. Anyway, just a whole mess of things. We'll see what happens with Annapolis. It's a fascinating story.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning into the program. We got a great guest coming up next. If you're watching this now and that subscribe button isn't filled in, click that button now. And if you already done so and you want to take your support of the program up a notch, $3.99 a month is all it costs to become an MK Ultra. With the membership to the channel, you get priority commenting, access to bonus content, and access to the Morning Kick Around Discord server. We got some great threads, some conversations talking national team, USL Championship, and the local soccer thread, one of my favorites there. So support the show in any which way you can.